Okay. Here we are again, ready or not.
Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Okay.
Welcome back to Bible Talk with Bruce and Becky. We are in a very cold winter day here in Chattanooga. I hope you're cozy and warm wherever you are. Don't forget, please, to pray for those and do what you can to help those who do not have good shelter in this kind of weather. We are continuing chapter 12 of Genesis. I will like to tell you one more word about the Tower of Babel in chapter 11. This is almost a parody of some of the religious beliefs of the Mesopotamian people. I think it was last episode we talked about a continuing polemic in the book of Genesis against idols. The name Babel sounds like the Hebrew name for confusion. So in verse 9 of chapter 11, its name was called Babel because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. But in the Chaldean language, which eventually evolved into Aramaic, Babel means the gate of God, or the gate of the God. El is the, what's the word I'm looking for, generic word for God throughout the Middle East at that time. Just as in the Arabic world today, Allah means God. Allah is not one God among many, but even Christians in Arabia could use Allah to refer to God, especially the God of the Old Testament. But I digress. Remember that they thought Babel was going to be the gate of God, but God used it for his own purposes. I also believe I mentioned last time I said we would stay with this man Abram, later Abraham, for 5 or 6 chapters. It really will be more like 10 or 12 chapters. Now that I have the record corrected.
No wonder I didn't try to do that.
Try to do what? Correct me?
Correct the record, yeah.
Yeah, well, if a light had gone on your head, you would have. That's one of your functions. Well, God appears to Abram, in Ur of the Chaldees, and he says, leave everything behind and go where I will show you later. And Becky, if you will please read now from chapter 12, verses 4 through 9.
You want me to say Abram or Abram? Or Abram?
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Okay, I'm speaking English here.
Go ahead.
So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Then Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran. And they departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree at Moreh. And the Canaanites were then in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. Is that it?
38 and 9.
And he moved from there to the mountains east of Bethel. And he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So Abram journeyed going on still toward the south.
Okay, a couple of things I will mention here just about the reading in general. In verse 5, among the possessions that they had acquired in Haran are the people that they had acquired. That would be slaves. They didn't hire a bunch of servants to go with them. They acquired and bought those people. Slavery is widely practiced in the biblical times, in the Old Testament times. God doesn't try to correct that practice. He does, however, regulate it. And we'll have more to say about slavery as we get into the Abraham story. Also, the tree at Mamre, mentioned in verse 6, Becky's translation uses the term terebinth. More modern translations, like the ESV that I'm reading from, say the oak.
They got oaks over there?
They got big oaks over there. Sometimes they are terebinths. Becky, please explain to us the difference between an oak and a terebinth. I know you have wide knowledge of botany.
Well, I know what an oak is, but I don't know what a terebinth is. But if it's an oak, then it's an oak.
You're in the majority of not knowing for sure what a terebinth is, especially in the Hebrew term that's used here. It's a big tree. That's why more modern translations say oak, I think. And if I can digress, as I love to do, one of the problems in translating it from an ancient language like Hebrew is if a specific animal or plant is mentioned in the Bible, we don't have a dictionary to explain what each one is. And so they have to make educated guesses. For example, we've all sung probably, if we've gone to church, about the lily of the valley. The lilies that are mentioned in the Old Testament are not the lilies that we think of here in America or in England or wherever. They're different plants, but we're not sure exactly where they fit into the catalog of plants. So when they come to a big tree mentioned here, the Hebrew doesn't describe or explain exactly what it is. So they say terebinth or oak, whatever they think will communicate more to people. Okay, did I clear that up sufficiently? No, but we'll move on. Go ahead, you're going to say something?
Well, I don't think it's necessary to clear it up, but it is educational. We are educated.
I'm trying my best. And they made me learn all this kind of stuff in seminary. I ought to be able to expound on it occasionally.
Well, it is important to know about the difficulties in translation.
Yes. For example, since I started it, I believe the King James Version mentions the unicorn at least once.
And sea monsters.
Yes, and
dragons.
Dragons and other things that may not have actually existed, but they believed in the 17th century that they did exist. So when they came to animals they were not sure of, they used terms like unicorn or dragon. Probably the unicorn is a rhinoceros in the original language. But there is some difficulty with that kind of term, and I think you should be aware of it and find a good Bible dictionary that will explain those things. And if you don't find a good Bible dictionary, keep tuning into Bible Talk with Bruce and Becky. Okay, where were we? Oh, I also wanted to mention twice here at different locations, Avram builds an altar to Yahweh. Becky, what's the primary purpose of an altar in Old Testament times?
The sacrifice.
Offer sacrifice. It's part of their worship. And so when he settles for a time in a place that he finds significant, he builds an altar and there he worships along with the other people in his group, the Lord. The altar at Shechem and the altar at Bethel are between Bethel and Ai. Becky has heard preachers say Ai, and maybe even some of her Bible teachers in college, but I'm going to say it should be pronounced I. And so we put it up another. We're being educational all over the place here today. Our education is spewing forth. Abraham is going toward the south, verse 9, which Becky translation says. More modern translations say the Negev, N-E-G-E-B, which is still the term for that area in modern times. It's the southern part of Palestine going down toward Egypt. Speaking of Egypt, brings us to our next section. Abraham and Sarai and their group have to go to Egypt. Verse 10. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was very severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai his wife, I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife, then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. The next verse explains how beautiful Sarai was in the eyes of the Egyptians. By the way, Becky, do you know how old Sarai was at this time?
Close to 90.
Not yet.
75.
Not yet.
Do I hear 60?
Abram was 75. How much younger is his wife?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. Think about it.
10 years?
10 years. She was 90 when she conceived Isaac.
Okay.
And Abram was 100. Good girl. Good woman, I should say. I don't want to use condescending sexist terminology.
Don't call me your sister either. Well, no, wait a minute. I am your sister in the Lord.
Yeah. And Sarai is a sister in one sense, we'll learn later. But what is Abram's motivation?
Fear.
Whom is he trying to save?
His own skin.
He's trying to save his own neck. How would you feel, Sarai, if hubby says, I want you to risk your reputation and maybe even your chastity, in the sense of being pure for your husband, by claiming to be my sister, just to save my neck?
Well, lots of women have done it.
That's not what I asked. How would you feel?
I would have to know how legitimate that fear was and how important it was to actually be in Egypt. If we had to be there and I thought you were going to get killed, I might compromise a few things.
You know something that strikes me every time I read this account and a couple more like it in Genesis? We're not told how Sarai felt. The woman is in a much different position in that culture. This is not something that I would admire Avram for, but is his motivation broader than just saving his own neck? What had just happened to him shortly before this, before he migrated to Canaan? God spoke to him and made a promise. The promise was, you will have many descendants, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through your offspring, and your offspring will inherit this land that I'm showing you. I think Avram is thinking to himself, how can God's promise be fulfilled if I'm dead? So he's trying to help God out, as we human beings are inclined to do. He thinks that this strategy will keep him safe so that God's promise can be fulfilled. You look like you're eager to make a comment.
Well, I'm thinking about later on when God asked him to sacrifice his son.
Aha.
And by that time, Abraham has figured out that it's better to do what's right, and God can take care of the rest of it.
Aha. Becky's jumping ahead with a little foreshadowing here. Yes, by the time we get to chapter 22, Avram has a different view of things, and I would say his faith has grown to the point that he thinks God can take care of it no matter what happens.
He knows that God can raise Isaac from the dead, so at this point he has no notion that God can save him without his own input.
Yes, as I said, his faith will continue to grow and his trust in God, just like people. Avram is not only a Bible character, he's a human being like us, And he doesn't get it all figured out at once, and he has to grow in his trust in God. Speaking for myself, that's been a big part of my journey, as people say these days. But he does try to help God fulfill the promise, I would say. Jumping way ahead, not just to the sacrifice of Isaac, but to the New Testament. Notice how many times Peter, after hearing Jesus say something, takes Jesus aside and tries to explain to him that Peter understands better than he does. We all want to help God out. And notice in the Old Testament as well, a related concept, how many times people argue with God. And he asks them to do something they think they know better.
And they don't get zapped.
Usually they don't get zapped. Not unless they lie or deliberately disobey God. Yeah, God can handle the fact that we have to know that he knows better, and we don't always get that the first or second or third time. Okay, let's move on then. They get to Egypt. And Becky, verse 14, if you would read that.
Okay.
Down to the end of the chapter.
All right. So it was, when Abram came into Egypt, that the Egyptians saw the woman that she was very beautiful. The princes of Pharaoh also saw her and commended her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. He treated Abram well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. But the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister'? I might have taken her to be my wife. Now therefore, here is your wife. Take her and go your way." So Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had.
All right, good job. I think you expressed Pharaoh's indignation quite well. There's kind of some foreshadowing in this account too. Plagues on Egypt because of Avram. And of course, we know later on in the time of Moses, plagues on Egypt because of Avram's descendants. There is somewhat of a repetition throughout the Old Testament that the same God does similar situations, handles them in similar ways. Sarah is very beautiful, and we think, well, she's 65 years old. However, how long did Sarah live? 137 years. She's about halfway, not quite halfway through her life. So in modern terms, we might think of her as perhaps a 40-year-old woman.
Or 35.
Yeah. So that would be much more believable for us because of the difference in lifespan. But
the time, how does she put it? The time of women, something about, she's through menopause. Let's put it that way.
Not here.
Later.
That's when she's 90.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So she's another 35 years to go on that one. 25 years. I don't know.
40.
Well, she's 65 here, and later
okay.
she's 90. So you can put that in equivalent terms.
I need a calculator.
I don't think so. We'll move on. Not only is Avram's life spared, his wealth increases, which should raise some ethical issues, which fortunately we don't have to deal with because our time's about up. And there are a lot of ethical issues in the Old Testament. We'll pick this up later because this is going to happen again to Avram and again to his son Isaac, a similar situation. And they profit from lying. God approve of lying? No, there's many scriptures that tell that God doesn't like people to lie. However, God does not increase his wealth here. Pharaoh does. So Pharaoh's view on lying must be different than maybe ours.
He just didn't want any more curses, any more plagues.
Ah, good. He's thinking about his country. This Pharaoh is much different from the one that Moses and his people will encounter. A different dynasty. They say dynasty in Britain, I understand. What does that have to do with anything? I don't know. I just like to go down those rabbit trails. Well, Avram escaped a difficult situation here because of the plague, or because of the famine that drives him to Egypt and his deception about his wife. We might say something briefly about these famines that occur several times in Genesis. And they basically have to do with which way the wind is blowing up in Palestine. If it's coming from the sea, they have rains twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. If it's blowing off of the desert from the other direction, they may have extended droughts which lead to famine. And it's an agricultural society. Fortunately, Egypt is the place they look to first to escape a famine. Why is that? What's special about Egypt?
The Nile.
You got it, baby. Give me the high five. The flooding of the Nile provides irrigation for Egypt. There's nothing like that in Palestine. They depend on the rainfall. Okay, we've told you everything we know about that chapter and even more. But we're going to wrap it up there. Next time we'll see a dispute that comes up involving Abraham and his nephew Lot. And also plan to get into chapter 14, one of my favorite stories of the Old Testament and one of the most intriguing for students of Genesis. But we'll save that for next time. And don't forget, don't spend money or any other valuables.
Oh,
Oh, no valuables.
okay.